Welcome to Nifnex TV Perth. My name is Zeeshan Pasha and I'm your host. Now, Nifnex TV is where small business challenges that you send in to us get addressed by an expert panel. Now we're looking at the fine print and the leadership that goes with it. Now, so we've got Shannon Bush talking about the leadership, and we've got Dominique Engelter to talk about the legal perspective. Shannon, Dominique, welcome. Nifnex TV. It's an exciting case study we've got here with the terms and conditions and leadership and the fine print, so to speak. Are you excited?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
a
great topic to talk about.
Excellent. Good. Why don't we introduce ourselves very quickly, and then which perspective we're going to bring or address this case study, and we'll get into the heat of the moment.
Right. Well, I'm Shannon Bush. I'm from Creative Possibility, so I'm a business coach and trainer specialising in working with the SME market. So I have a great passion for something I call personal leadership. So today I'm going to bring our leadership and sort of a management view to this topic that we're going to talk about. So terms and conditions, and as you said, the small print and fine detail that business needs to take care of.
And in relation to the fine print and small detail, I'm Dominique Engelter from Williams & Hughes. We're a boutique law firm in West Perth, predominantly, providing commercial legal services and commercial litigation services to private and public companies and small businesses. So I'm hoping to discuss today a little bit about the terms and conditions and the fine print and what areas of your business you need to think about that in.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that, Dominic. So basically getting into it, how important are these, the fine print, so to speak, from a management perspective? Because if you don't have those, how should a manager or leader be looking at it in like how much of detail as well?
Mm. That's a big open-ended question, so many things to talk about. I definitely think that there needs to be a lot of documentation when it comes to business.
Yes.
Whether you are a solopreneur working by yourself or you have an organisation that's of a particular size or growing. As I bring my corporate background into this experience as well, and I've also in the past been a quality manager, so I know about that, the detail, the having everything documented, those sort of things. But I really think it is essential, as I said. And your management team has a massive responsibility, not only for making sure that certain things are documented, but also for setting the culture and leading by example and guiding the rest of the team, again, relevant of how big that team is, into the importance of making sure that we have, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much time would you actually spend actually looking into it?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at this, and you look at a management team and you look at a leadership team, and I actually see them, they're not necessarily one and the same. Your leadership team is more the team that are setting the strategy and the bigger vision for the business, so they're sort of taking care of the bigger, broader vision for what's going on, and more working from a strategic approach. Within that, or separate to that, there could be then a management team, and I see a management team or the manager or managers in a business more taking care of the day-to-day things, the operational function. And I see that if those two sort of components exist, it's the management team's responsibility more to be involved with the documentation, policies, procedures, terms and conditions, and other documentation that I'm sure Dominique will share with us. And I think there definitely needs to be an amount of time. It's hard to be specific because it's so individual to the business and what they want to achieve in a greater vision.
True.
There needs to be some responsibility, I think, for the fine print across, just not at the leadership or necessarily the management level, but right across the board. So, for example, in your sales division and in your accounting division as well, there needs to be a set of terms and conditions that you're incorporating into all of your business, whether you're providing goods or providing services. But there needs to be a consistent approach across the business to follow these things up. So if a quote is issued, it should go out with the standard terms and conditions. Then sometimes if a purchase order is coming back into the business, sometimes they will send their own terms and conditions with it. So your accounts department needs to be aware of these sorts of things and knowing, well, hang on a second, no, some competing terms and conditions are coming across. We need to combat that and say, no, we're only operating on these terms and conditions. There's a whole heap of different issues, and when we're talking about with the case study about sales and results, for our leadership or management team, the bosses of the business, if you like, terms and conditions are just so important to that because they're the main plank upon which you're building the financial success for your business. So often we see, so often we have clients that you're seeing a lot of their terms and conditions come across for the first time in their invoices. So they'll send out an invoice and on the invoice it'll say payment within 7 days and it'll have some sort of retention of title clause to, the goods are still ours until they're paid for in full. I mean, those sorts of terms are completely ineffective because the contract's already been made, a service is provided well before the invoice goes out. So you have to have all of these things in mind well before you get to that sort of stage, because that's the first step in being able to actually recover anything.
So what about this, what about the time when the small business owners, there's a lot of the time that they don't actually have a formal contract as such. They have the verbal agreement that, okay, you pay me $500 to do this, and then they just send an invoice across. Does this sort of an issue for a small business owner where there's no formal contract? What happens there?
Yeah, look, I suppose it is a risk for business owners, and like a lot of things, it's a matter of managing your investment versus your costs. So if you're doing some work for $500 and it's the nature of your business that you're taking calls or arranging business just over the phone, look, then maybe so be it, and maybe that's a risk that you decide to take. But if you ever have an opportunity to send someone an email, for example, or a fax, or confirm the terms of your services in any way in writing, well, then that's an opportunity to refer back to a standard set of terms and conditions that can be prepared once and then just sit there indefinitely and always be used. And it's certainly worth thinking about, even for these small jobs, because often when something goes wrong, the loss and damage suffered will be significantly higher than what the actual contract cost was. So, for example, I've been recently involved in a matter where some people were doing some work, and I think the value was maybe about $22,000 or $25,000. But we're now acting for the other side and suing them for about $450,000 because of the extent of the damage suffered. So that's a very good example. Now that's a bit different. There are terms and conditions involved in that contract, but that's a good example of the people supplying the service for their $22,000 or $25,000 would never have thought that they could be liable for such a great amount.
But from a leadership perspective, how easy is it to actually monitor these things to actually happen with the contracts? And
I think it can be easy. You know, a part of it, I think, it always comes back to mindset. So if you expect it to be easy, it can definitely be easier. But it's about, I think, making the most of the small business network that you belong to. Very rare that I meet someone who's in the small business that doesn't have some connections within the small business community. But someone like Dominic, for example, or you find someone who can help you with that information, rather than what I often see, people get very overwhelmed by all this documentation they have to look after themselves. So they let that overwhelm stop them from doing anything, and that is a big concern. From my perspective, I have certainly had in the past is that I provide coaching and training services. I have had clients who've been really surprised that I have terms and conditions and a contract document that I use, because I've not seen that in my industry before. That gobsmacked me.
So how does that impact you? Does it, of course, looks more professional? Yeah. But there's so many people who don't do it. So.
That's right. Well, the thing for me is very much when it comes to leadership, lead by example. Be aware of what's required for you to be professional, for you to be safe, for you to look after yourself and your clients, and to go and to attend training, to consult with somebody who knows differently, who can also share stories like Dominic just did about that difference. I think that makes a big difference for people when they can hear somebody else's experience and they can fully understand the potential impact. Then they can see that investment in their training, time, resources, money, to have the right documentation support systems in place isn't such an issue then.
Yeah. I guess it does boil down to the dollars. In sense
sometimes.
For the small to medium-sized businesses, they go, okay, we do need a contract, we do need fine print, so to speak, but where do we go? How much it's going to cost? It's an expensive affair.
And some of these things can be reasonably standard documents, at least to start with. So there's an initial investment which need not be particularly significant, that you then keep for many years, and you only necessarily need to make changes for it if there's changes in legislation or so on, or some significant case change that then throws a different light on your terms and conditions. So one example would be I mentioned retention of title claims. with the personal properties and securities regime that's just come in. So there's been a bit of a change now. For example, if you're hiring out goods to people, you need to register your interest in those goods. So if anything happens to the person that you're hiring to, whether they become bankrupt or it's a company that goes into liquidation, that you've given notice to everyone that, hey, this is actually our stuff and we have ownership rights over it, so that you don't lose your interest in the goods. So there's a specific statutory regime now that you need to be very careful of. But apart from that, I think once you've got your terms and conditions in place, and then the training has gone through as to, look, teaching the right people in your organisation what they need to do and when, then the leaders can step back a bit, I suppose, from it, and the managers then take over. And it doesn't have to be a very difficult process for people.
No, that's right.
What about the flip side of it, where there's insurance that comes in, and you get all these different policies and things that you got to sign for insurance, and then you go, that again has its own set of fine print. So do you then send it off to your lawyers and solicitors and them to actually check over it, or do you just feel that it's standard most of the time and sign for it and send it off? Because I've seen so many times that I've actually done that myself. You just sort of check box, sign and send it off. How important is it to check those?
It can be reasonably important to make sure you're covered by insurance for all those things that you may wish to be covered for. And insurers, just like a lot of people that are providing services, all provide slightly different products. And look, that is, a lot of insurance policies these days are written in fairly plain English sort of language. So it's really just a matter of time, investing a little bit of time in going through the policy, make sure you understand it, and to go and look at a few different insurers and see what each will cover. So look, that's certainly an issue, but then also coming back to the idea of your fine print and your terms and conditions, that's a good opportunity for you to have exclusion clauses and limitation liability clauses, so that you're less likely to have an insurance claim. Or if you do, it'll be limited, because you can say, well, whatever we're going to do, we won't be liable for any consequential losses that come out of our negligence or so on. So at least that's one way to protect yourself.
Cool. The legal always sort of gets me.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, what Dominic said I find very interesting as well, but I do believe it's important to take that extra time to read any documentation that comes to you and be really clear on the documentation you're sending out to your potential clients or actual clients, so that you're aware when someone asks you a question or calls you on something, that you understand what it is that you're sharing.
Yes.
And again, that comes back to, if you don't understand, find someone to ask who can give you the right information so it is clear.
On a different note, I was at a networking event the other day, and someone actually came up and said, I've got this really brilliant idea, I need to discuss that with you. I'm going, yeah, absolutely, anytime. Just catch up for a coffee. Said, well, I do have this disclosure thing that you got to sign. You okay with that? I'm going, well, if you really thought that I was trustable or trustworthy, why would you ask me to sign it? But I can understand the perspective. They are trying to cover themselves. But it doesn't happen a lot these days.
I can't say I've heard it very often. Dominic might have, because of the industry that you're in, but I don't hear that often. But I do know, I find that more people are talking more about intellectual property and how to actually take care of that. The things that we have, the services we offer, the goods we offer. How do we actually take care of our intellectual property in our business? But even still, a whole different topic. But what is that in the first place? But
well, it's like prenups, isn't it? I mean, that's a context you often have this sort of thing raised in. Do you trust me or not?
Yes.
And I suppose the easy answer is, oh, look, my lawyers are making me. It's all my lawyers' fault. But yeah, look, that's right. I agree with what Shannon says with IP. It's becoming so much more important these days to protect your IP, and you so easily lose the rights to your IP if you've let it out. So hopefully the lawyer will be saying to the individual that's coming to you, look, this might cause some friction with the people that you're speaking to, but don't stay the course and don't give up on your non-disclosure documents and your confidentiality agreements, and just explain to them, look, the reason I need this is because as soon as I'm out there telling people, I lose all my rights, even if they are my friend.
Yes.
And I think, so part of the role of the lawyer, I suppose, will be to help the client manage their explanations to others. because it's no good a lawyer providing someone with advice, look, use these confidentiality agreements and so on, if then the client won't do it because they're finding that a difficult process when they're speaking to people.
It's a whole new kettle of fish when you're trying to get your team or the manager sort of going, okay, this is I pay, don't release it. It's the same with the databases and the CRMs and all those sort of things that you have, even if it's on Excel sheets. You know, how do you sort of make sure that doesn't leak out to the public?
That's right. You know, there are so many acts and different things, aren't there, around, you know, information and what to share and what's not okay to share. And I think it's part of the responsibility of the business owner and the leadership management team to be aware of what those are. You don't need to know them all in fine detail. They're massive documents and many, many of them, but you know, have some idea about what actually relates to your business and your industry and the industries of your customers or clients, and then get back to getting the right support, the people that actually know the fine detail. So they can help you and look after you.
Speaking of prenups, though, that you brought up, Dominique, how does that sort of, does that happen a fair bit in business itself, especially with the husband?
Look, I think it does, although I don't personally get involved in it, thankfully. But no, you certainly do see it in small family businesses, and when you're looking at succession planning for small business coming up. And there's certainly lawyers out there, including within our firm, although I don't specifically deal with it, that look at succession planning and these sorts of issues. So,
so I think we've addressed a fair few points there for fine print and leadership. Are there any parting words, just sort of to close out the discussion?
I think the thing I'd like to say is not to be afraid of the fine print and the detail. As I said, you know, I find some people that I've spoken to over the years I've been in business, it's so overwhelming for some people that they, you know, blank it out and pretend it doesn't exist. They find that easier than actually just being able to go and, you know, say, well, actually, I don't know what I need to know. There's lots of different resources available. So, you know, if you're not sure, find someone who is well resourced and networked and ask them, and just start small, just a little bit at a time. You don't have to go and do it all overnight when you start your business. Can
you cut, copy, paste from other?
You ought not. I mean, you should, I suppose, look at although sets of terms and conditions can be reasonably standard, you do want to tailor them to your business. So someone providing goods or providing services might be different. Standard services might be different to someone who's hiring out goods, for example. Now, there's a difference between someone who's just selling goods and someone who's providing services. But certainly it's, look, that's at least a starting point. It's just to look around and see what's available and start to get your head around the sorts of things you need to be including in your terms and conditions, and then get some assistance with it, absolutely.
So just on that note, just a very quick one. So you know how sometimes people say, okay, can you please sign this documentation? And they have a little checkbox to say, go visit this particular website and all the terms and conditions are available there. Is that even a possibility?
Yeah, that can be valid.
So basically saying, okay, take it here, we're assuming that you've already read it. Is that sort of, does that hold up?
Oh, look, it can hold up, but I mean, if a person is being asked to sign effectively a contract when you know that they haven't had an opportunity yet to look at your terms and conditions because they're in front of you and you're telling them about them now for the first time and saying they can go and look somewhere else for them, so obviously you know that they haven't seen them. Then no, I wouldn't expect that to be enforceable. So you have to give someone an opportunity to either go away and look at them online, or alternatively to provide it there as part of your whatever you've got, whether it be a quote or otherwise. It can be on the back, as long as some attention is drawn to, hey, there's something on the back of this piece of paper, or alternatively just as separate documents attached. You do actually.
So I just had to sort of get that question answered.
You do have to give them some opportunity. So that the court, I suppose, if there's a dispute, needs to see that there is an agreement that those terms and conditions are going to apply. What people often do, of course, is they sign to say, well, they'll supply services on the basis of that, or they'll sign something saying that they've seen the terms and conditions, and obviously they haven't bothered to go and read them. But you know, in terms of trying to prove what the agreement was between the parties, the first thing that we're stuck with is the piece of paper that they've signed, which says yes, they went and had a look at it. So it makes it a bit of a harder wheelbarrow for them to push to say, look, I didn't agree to these terms and conditions.
So ideally you'll have a separate piece of paper to say, well, these are the terms and conditions signed, so that we're sort of covered in every...
Subject to the nature of your business. As long as that's going to work, you wouldn't want a situation where down the line your staff then aren't including the terms and conditions with with their quotes or their contracts. So that just needs to be initially, I think, subject to a little bit of supervision or policy or direction, just to make sure they are actually being included.
Yes.
So yeah, look, if they are, then they can go as a separate document. So that's fine.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Did you have anything
pleasure.
to say before we finish up, or you're all good?
Parting comments, I suppose, from my perspective is just that, you know, business really, it's about making money, and there might be other components to it. You might be doing something you love, but in effect it is your job, and is what you're doing to make a living, and your terms and conditions are one of your foundation stones for being able to go out and invoice people for what you're doing and to be able to actually recover money. So it is a very important facet to your business, and everyone needs to be, you know, well on top of it.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank
Dominic.
you.
Thanks,
And
Zeeshan.
we'll see you again next month for more case studies.
Will do.
Great.
Thank
Thank you.